Thank you again, everyone, joining me today. So we'll be discussing volunteer management software and how to choose one with confidence. So who am I? My name is Micah Pierce Roberts. I'm a software sales advisor for the western half of the United States, so all states west of the Mississippi River. And I connect with various programs ranging from small nonprofits to enterprise-sized organizations who are checking out different volunteer management softwares, helping answer their questions along the journey. And I'm located in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle area. But I grew up in the Kansas City area, so I'm kind of a Kansas City guy too. Lived on both the Kansas and Missouri side. Lived and grew up mostly on the Kansas side before graduating at the University of Missouri in Columbia with a psychology degree. And I love hiking up here with my fiance in the Pacific Northwest. We're both big time fitness and nutrition people. So now it's your turn. It's time to get to know everybody who's joining today. We have quite a bit to unpack. So please open your chat and then I'll follow along with some questions to ask, say who you are and where you're from. And it's all right if we're a little shy too. I totally understand that webinars, meetings sometimes can be awkward, so that's okay. Linda, welcome. Here we go. Yeah, Omaha, Illinois. There we go. Yeah, we're spreading across the state lines. This is good. Overland Park. That's where I grew up. What a small world. Thank you for joining, Margot. And we have Kelly, Catlin, making sure I'm saying everybody's name on here. All right. Oh, you're from Albuquerque. Sorry about that, Margot. But anyways, time to get to the questions. So 1, 2, or 3. Have you ever used a VMS? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for not sure. All right, good mix today, good mix. Now, what tool are you using most to manage your program right now? Type 1 for spreadsheet, 2 for VMS, 3 for other. If it's 2, totally your call if you want to share which VMS you're using. If it's 3, that's the one I'm more curious about. What are you using that's not one of the other? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Still establishing your program, that would make sense. So it's just kind of in that gray area trying to figure out things right now. Okay. Have you ever felt like this? When you see this person, what emotions come to your mind? Things I kind of think of are like overwhelmed, upset, stress, definitely, fatigue, frustrated. A lot of that stress may be becoming because you might not be using the right tool for the job, which could be one of the reasons why we're all connected here today, thinking that there has to be a better way, right? The challenges we experience in our role increase, we can start to feel like this person, this image. That's when we know it's time for a change. Some commonly cited problems when I meet with people are like, we're doing too much data entry. We're doing this, a lot of duplication, a lot of repeated steps over and over again. And it's kind of making the reporting not very accurate. And we're kind of disconnected, discombobulated. We're just using so many things. We don't really know what's going on. That can lead to a lot of inefficiencies and maybe turnover on the staff or the volunteer side. It just highlights the importance of why the right tools for the job matter. This is actually from a survey that G2 did a few years ago, where they surveyed over 3,500 people, asking different questions. And what G2 is a software review site where you can evaluate different kinds of softwares like a volunteer management system. The question that I'm showing on here is that they recorded in their survey was, have you ever become dissatisfied at work due to missing or mismatched software? And it was found that a little more than half said yes. They have a whole lot. There's a whole lot of other interesting questions on here that I didn't share. One of them that I want to mention is they found 1 in 8 people left their job due to mismatched software. So just emphasizes the importance again of having the right tools for the job. So
yeah, but I'm gonna turn off my screen.
Is a VMS. And thank you everyone if you recently joined. Just a reminder to please mute. There will be time for a Q&A at the end. Thank you very much. Right tools for the job, all in one solution. So project managers use project management software, accountants use accounting software, sales and marketing teams have their own specific system. They're designed to make the roles a lot easier. And when it comes to volunteer management systems, it's designed to make it easier for the volunteer engagement professional. So helping with things on the front end, like recruiting, screening your volunteers, tracking what steps they've completed, any trainings, and then a lot of the feature portions like the scheduling can get complicated, communications to stay engaged with our volunteers, tracking the data like hours or other outcomes. And it even affects the volunteer too, to make their lives easier. So making it so they can apply, send and receive communications, so they know what their next steps are. And then that way they know when to sign up for a role, or even manage their own schedule so they can track that with their current life and update their own information, track their progress on their hours, and a whole lot more. And I don't think a spreadsheet can do all of that. So let's get you to feeling more like this, which is what you'd feel like by reaping the benefits of a VMS that I've kind of mentioned a little bit. Better use of your time is a big one, even the volunteers. So you'll have better reporting, better engagement, higher level thinking, accurate data. So that way you can accurately assess where your program's at and where you want to be. Just better overall for our morale. To land at that better place, though, we need to get to that desired state. And one of the greatest thinkers of our time, Albert Einstein, mentioned that we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. So are you and your team ready to reach that desired state? What's preventing the change? Attitudes. What attitudes are? They're learned ways of responding to people and situations based on the beliefs, values, and assumptions we hold that are reflected in our behavior. So listed some attitudes on this slide that you may have come across at one point. When contemplating a system change, costs, definitely a big one. We can't afford software. Might make sense on the surface, maybe not. Because a lot of the times the costs of the not using the software can be overlooked with all this additional time spent on the duplicated efforts that I was mentioning earlier, like back-end data entry work, or looking at a bunch of busy spreadsheets. Speaking of spreadsheets, they're free, right? They cost us nothing. Are they free, really? Is all that time looking at spreadsheets coming at zero cost? And that's not even accounting for the human error working in that environment. It's pretty easy to make an error looking at a bunch of lines. But we already use so many tools. We don't need another one. We don't need another system, which I actually find the opposite being true, because implementing the volunteer management software a lot of times takes away a lot of other tools that you're using. You're centralizing it in one area, so you're actually using less with something new. And then the last one I'll mention on here on this slide, as you can see them, my volunteers can't use technology. Is that true? Is that really true? How many parents, grandparents have a smartphone or use a computer or have Facebook? My grandma's 88 years old. She uses all three. So if you want to move that needle to distance yourselves from the problems being experienced to land at a better spot, change is the answer. So ask yourself and check in, am I part of the solution or am I part of the problem? And don't just ask it once, check in on it before, during, and beyond this journey, in terms of if your attitude is creating a friction or flow and supporting the team's ability to get to that desired state. So be sure to reach that goal. Supporting all of that, I'm going to share with you a template that you and your team can follow to make finding your next VMS a whole lot easier, because there's a lot of guesswork that comes into it. There's so many new options. They all do all these different things. So it's definitely going to help reduce a lot of the heavy lifting, take away a lot of the guesswork and the uncertainty, to making sure that you're going on the right path and making the right decisions to ensure you land at that better spot and getting the right tools for the job. you can do this, and you will because others have. First step, we want to define our problem. And once we define our problem, now we can set a goal. So that way we know what we're trying to achieve. So there could be a lot of different problems, though, many different challenges across several people. So we want to shed light on the main ones. Some may have greater priority due to their consequential impact on people in the organization. So the first worksheet I want to share, and remember, after this webinar, you're going to receive our resources that include our buyer's guide. That's actually a fillable PDF, so you can work on this worksheet on a computer and fill it out. But of course, there's always the option to download, print it, and then do it on hand if that's your preferred method of working on these worksheets. So this is our problem statement. It's what you can use to brainstorm just kind of what the current issues you have now when managing your program, your volunteers. You'll lay out here what the problem is, and we want to bring in our team too, because many of these problems can affect several other people, which is why we want a team effort in this type of project. It can be too much data entry, that can be a problem. It could be too much time spending on admin or manual tasks, using too many tools, that the hours tracking is not good. It's just hard to access the data we want to dig and find. And that's when we want to write in our next column, like, are any of your colleagues experiencing some of these problems? List who it is. Is it the volunteer services team? Is it the volunteers? Is it IT? Is it leadership? And then lastly, we want to lay out what the consequences are. Are they turnover in our program on the staff side, on the volunteer side? Is there disengagement, not as much recognition to the volunteer? Maybe failure to deliver on your mission, or possibly damage to the reputation of your organization. And once we got this out, identify the top 1 to 3 problems. So it's simplified, it's centralized, so that way, because the goal of this whole exercise is to come up with a proposed statement that you can communicate what the problem is, so we have it in writing. Now we can pass along the message. So once we've defined our problem, now we can define our goal, so we know exactly what we are trying to achieve. Our goal I've written on here is to select a VMS that our team is confident will solve our challenges and elevate our program to new heights of mission achievement. As we mentioned earlier, this is a team effort, so let's not go at it alone, because one person choosing a new software, that's going to affect many who have all these different types of needs, using it in different ways, could lead to a recipe for disaster. So it's team approach, definitely the way to go. So who's on your team? Typically, see a combination of these types of roles here, starting with the volunteer coordinator, manager, definitely the key users, and a lot of the times may lead the team in the search for the new software, because a lot of the times they use a lot of the features, functionalities, helping making their job a whole lot easier by intaking volunteers, screening, making sure the right ones are being brought in the program, where they are in the steps, communicating with your current ones, letting them know what the upcoming opportunities are, tracking data, all of that. They're not the only ones with a vested interest. Even the volunteers themselves do, as it makes their volunteering a lot easier, knowing when their next shifts are, what shifts are available, tracking their own hours and information, different ways to get involved. And a good strategy for this is to have 2 volunteers on your team, one who's tech savvy and one who's not so much. So that way it's more inclusive. You're going to be addressing, because the volunteers really diverse. This is why we love them, come with a whole bunch of different backgrounds. So that's definitely a good approach to take. IT, they'll help you assess your system requirements, particularly relating to security and data. So it's great having them on the team if you have an IT team. And if you don't, definitely recommend outsourcing. I understand not everybody's going to have the budget to do so. So if that's the case, then your next step would be to scan your volunteer base to see if there's anybody who's willing to help you here. Board of directors, executive director, it just depends on how your program's structured. They're typically on the bookend side of things. So give you the thumbs up to start, and then give you the thumbs up to approve that final decision. Consultant. So some places they choose to lean on expertise of a professional who's been there, done that. And if it's in your budget, I highly recommend considering, because they've gone through this process before. They know what the market is like. They know what their top options are, where their strengths are, weaknesses. So it can really take a lot of the guesswork out if that's a resource you can take advantage on. Definitely worth considering leaning on someone experienced in the journey. So now we've come up with our team. Let's fill in who they are on our worksheet, their name, what they do, why are they on the team? And as time goes on, it may change. So just keep this handy as you move forward in this journey. Now, so we know who's on our team. Now we need to determine what our needs are. And before we get to that step, well, while we're doing that step, I should say, we want to also assess who the vendors are. So checking out the vendor profile, as this is a very critical step. The needs assessment is literally your measuring stick that you use to compare against each option. And you're vetting more than this inanimate object known as a VMS, because the people in the company who make up that company, that make decisions on the product down the road, definitely matter. So be sure to choose your tech partners wisely. And you want to evaluate them on several categories that I'll mention. So first, overall, just the vendor profile themselves. What's their stability looking like? How long have they been in the business? What's their decision making for developing their products over time? Do they give you any kind of sneak peek on what it looks like before you make a decision, like offering to book a personal demonstration or providing videos of a recorded one, showing along how the system looks in each part, or even offering a hands-on trial so you can actually test it yourself to see how it works before making a decision. The technological requirements, definitely very important, tend to be, that's why they're called requirements, must have. So how well does that vendor keep the data secure? Do they disclose what they do with their data? What are the protocols? How do they manage security, things like backups? What kind of certifications they have? Are they HIPAA compliant? Are they ISO 27001 certified? Do they offer two-factor authentication? Something to not overlook, as well as support. So are they responsive? Can you get a hold of a human being? Can you call either by calling, emailing, chat, some way? What are their location and hours of support? So that way, when I need help, I know I'm going to get a timely response. Budget, money, that's a big one. So what are the recurring costs? What are the setup or the one-time costs? How does the billing work? Is it monthly? Is it annually? And with what we're purchasing, does it include upgrades? And what are the upgrades to consider? Do I have to make a decision now? Could I upgrade later? What all comes with the package? And in that package are our functional and feature requirements. So like recruiting, sending emails, sending texts, scheduling, reporting. Is there a volunteers portal? Is there an app for that? Those kinds of things. So then how do you use it? Like, is it easy to use? Is it intuitive? And then based on that, is there a way that shows me how to do it? Like either in a video, a written article, what are the train materials? Is there a way to have like a personal, like kind of training, a training session to meet our own specific needs that we can sign up for. And then the long term. So you want to think, how is this going to look in the long run? Because our program is going to change over time, whether it grows or shrinks. Maybe we add a new location. Maybe we're adding more volunteer opportunities, a more higher influx of volunteers. How is this going to look 3 to 5 years down the road? And we'll be using our vendor profile worksheet to kind of track these questions. That will come, the worksheet that you'll have, it'll come with some pre-filled questions, but remember, you can change those on there and come up with your own questions and then change them over time as you go through your journey. You'll use that to compare it with your needs right here, where you'll list out all the needs that you have when assessing all of your different options like support, features, security, and how well each vendor's doing on each column. It just helps make a lot more clear and informed decisions, so that way we know there's a reason why we're leaning towards one option versus another based on what they do, how they can help our program, rather than just kind of guessing. We're making a gut decision. So, and then if we want to assess the priority of that need, is it higher up? Is it lower? So there's a way we like doing that by using these acronyms, MSN, and for must have. So these are our requirements. If you don't have this, it's a deal breaker. It's mandatory. Immediately disqualify that software if they do not meet this particular need. The unwavering. The next level are the should have. So we still want these particular features, these options. They're important. There's a lot of value in them. Does not necessarily disqualify them though, because there's definitely still other higher needs, and but still worth making a note of, so you can check to see if the other options can cover as many of these as possible. And then lastly, the nice to have. So these are more of a bonus if found. There's not as much impact if they're left out. They're still worth making note of. They're kind of like our dream features, things that we would wish a software would have. So now we kind of discuss the vendor, the needs, matching it together to find the right solution. So now let's talk about the journey and the stages for evaluating your new volunteer management system. Laid it out into 4 different stages. On here it says like typically takes 2 to 4 months. That's very general though. It's going to be different for everybody. There's going to be some that could be even shorter than that, and then there are going to be others that will be longer. So this is just kind of like a very generalized timeline when we just kind of put it all together with all the different programs. First step we'll discuss is determining who are our contenders worth paying attention to, stage 1. Then the next filter, stage 2. So this is when we connect with the vendor and meet for a demonstration. And third one, testing out the product, the trial, before we meet and finally make a decision of which one we're going to go with. So let's start with stage 1. Broken it out into 4 different steps. Timeline around a month, 2 to 4 weeks mentioned on here. First step, building that foundation. So coming up with that needs assessment, going through the worksheets that I just mentioned, listing what your requirements are, what your must-haves, who's on your team. It can take about a week or a little longer. Again, helps you build that base foundation. So then once you have it, now you can review it, which is what step 2 is for. So you'll meet with your new team in a 1 to 2 hour meeting where you can discuss needs, revise them, finalize them. So that way everybody is on the same page. We know what we're looking for. So now we can start our research. Step 3, checking out our options. Typically led by IT and volunteer services, IT due to making sure the system can meet the requirements, system requirements, and then volunteer services definitely to meet must-have functionalities. And a lot of the times it's done through a Google search. Something highly recommend, great resource, volunteer software comparisons. Just there's so many options out there, so many new ones. There's all these bells and whistles. It could be pretty dizzy looking to find, okay, which ones are truly the top options. So what this website provides is a list of all the top volunteer management softwares, and it gives the pros and cons of each of them with reviews from those who've evaluated and used the product, links to their website. So it just centralizes that resource to make it easier determining who are your top options, maybe narrowing it down to potentially a week once you read the reviews, or maybe contact the options, the vendors, for clarifying questions. And then that will lead to our final step in this stage, which is our first round of shortlisting. So who makes the first cut? And be decided in a 1-hour meeting just based on the research that we've done so far, where we'll discuss, record, and shortlist, which we'll start with our technological requirements, and then our must-haves on the support side, the functional features, and the cost. So as you see on here in our shortlist, we have all of our different softwares we're looking at, but we're just going to go ahead and disqualify one option here because out of budget, they cost too much and they don't meet our security requirements on here. So when we're disqualifying our software options, just be sure to write the reason for disqualification, so that way it's recorded why we're not going with that product. So it's a lot more clear once you make to that final decision why you went with the software that you went with. And now we're ready for stage 2, which is a personal demonstration. This is where we'll be in touch with the software, like asking questions. Maybe in terms of the demonstration, there's videos available of the product, which I highly recommend watching first, because a lot of the times they can really answer a lot of the basic overview, like functional type questions. So then once it's time to like book a demonstration, you'll have more specific questions, and you may even have questions that you didn't even know was a question until you saw what the product can do. So it just leads to a lot more of a highly effective meeting, and you're just more confident. You can better determine if the vendor's worth evaluating further. Helps you prepare for the meeting too. That can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. Typically an hour is usually the length of these kinds of meetings. And give this whole timeline on this stage about 2 weeks or so you can give everybody time to meet together on our different software options, which we recommend no more than 5 at this point, which can still be quite a bit. Like 3 to 5 is a good sweet spot for scheduling demonstrations, watching videos, things like that. And once we've completed, we've met with all of our potential vendors, we've watched the videos, booked demonstrations, asked questions, is when it's time to meet internally with the team to discuss, record, and go through our next shortlist to narrow it down to our best 2 options, ideally. And we're going to make our decisions mostly based on like the features, the must-have requirements. So that way, once we're looking at who we have left, we can determine who our top 2 are, and then write down why we didn't go with one of them, which on here was a little clunky and outdated. Didn't really have the reporting capabilities we like based on the demonstration on the with the vendor. So now it's time to move to stage 3, which ideally is 2 options left when we can trial. Before we get to this stage, like you may already be aware if the software has a trial or not, and if they do, a question I recommend asking is, what happens if the trial expires? Does everything get lost? Do we have to start over? And then what kind of trial is it? Is it like a sandbox, or is it more like a actual account that we can move forward with it? It just helps you prepare how to approach the trial too, because a lot of the times once you sign up, explore it, you want to focus on the features and functionality on the important things, like how do we build a volunteer opportunity? Does it make sense with the program? Maybe test out the support, see how responsive they are. The timeline of these trials, they can really vary anywhere from like a week to a month, which is why timeline here is like 4 weeks ish. And once the trial's over, we have a hands-on test of the product. That's when the team can meet together, go for a third round of shortlisting to discuss how it went, what were the pros and cons of each of them. Something else, another idea to consider too is like maybe having one half of a team trial one system, another trial another. So there can be a lot of dedicated time on a specific one. There's a lot of different ways to go about that, but ultimately the hope is after the trial and meeting with your team, you can come to a decision. So by selecting the best one and why we went this way, by focusing mostly on the support requirements, the usability, all those must have first before we get into the should haves and the nice to haves. So we are almost there at the finish line. So stage 4 subscribing, so we know who we're going with. This is when we can bring it to leadership and recommend the software we want to subscribe to. We have all of our reasoning, we have all of our worksheets. So that way it makes it's clear, it's written down why we're making the decision we're making. So that way it can be communicated to the leadership to allow them to give you the thumbs up to move forward. And that process can just, it can really vary. Sometimes it's a couple of days, other times it's a couple of months. A lot of the times it just depends on the type of organization you're in. If you're like in a smaller nonprofit with an executive director, sometimes just a couple of days. But if we're in like government or like in a city, there can be a lot of different steps and departments it's got to move through before it gets the final go on there. So be sure to plan ahead, which is what this webinar is all about. We've discussed how we plan, how we prepare and execute the plan. So that way at the end, you'll be able to choose wisely and select the right software with confidence. So change, it's imminent, but change also creates opportunity. Thank you, everyone. And as I mentioned, my name's Micah Pierce Roberts. I'm a software sales advisor at Better Impact. We're here to help company. We offer several variety of features within our volunteer management software, starting with a customized online application form, ways to track training, like watching videos where a volunteer can take a quiz to past trainings, scheduling, adding different shifts to different opportunities, texting and emailing, reporting on hours and other aspects, other different outcomes. And it all comes with a volunteer app too, so that way they can have it on the go, whether they're an Android or an Apple user. And before we move on to the Q&A, I just want to remind everyone again today that links to the webinar recording plus the buyer's guide and worksheet will be sent in an email in the next 24 hours. So be sure to check your inboxes for that content and use those resources to help you along with your new software selection journey. And then one last thing I'm going to drop in the chat is, excuse me there's some other helpful resources here. So there's betterimpacts.com/events, where if you find these helpful and you want to register and sign up for more, you'll find our next upcoming events at betterimpacts.com/events. But what I want to drop in the chat here is also our PDU link. So what this is a certification of completion that you have joined this webinar. So I'm dropping in the chat right now. Once you click this link, you'll be able to receive those credits. And as a heads up, you'll have to click the link while this meeting is open in order to receive those. So please take the time and Click open the link if you want to receive credits. And with that, I will open everything up to Q&A. So are there any questions about anything discussed today? Can be relating on how to choose a volunteer management software, anything I've covered today, or anything about Better Impact, the company, the product, volunteer impact. Open it all up. All right, thank you, Kelly. Looks like we have a question. At Better Impact, is it possible to adjust services once already in contract? Okay, so for example, selecting the standard edition up to 50 volunteers, but 6 months, realize we want to upgrade to plus or additional. This is a great question. Sounds like you've been doing your due diligence so far, Kelly, and been looking at us. So we're flexible on those services. Like for plus, you can upgrade at any time. And then for the additional volunteers, so those are actually evaluated on an annual basis as you can continue to grow within your program. And it's only it's billed at the time of renewal through a snapshot count, and we're only counting your active volunteers, as we don't count archived or those who are onboarding. And then you'll have the opportunity as well to, in case you forgot to archive volunteers, you can go back and do so, and we'll recount to make sure we're getting an accurate representation of your program. Great question, Kelly. You're welcome. No, we got a small crowd here today. That's all right. I'll still wait to see if we have any questions. Give a couple of minutes if anyone can think of any. And if not, that's okay too. And if there are no more questions, I guess we may have to, oh, yeah, Linda, speak up. You don't have to, yeah.
Okay, I don't know the terminology, but when you were showing Better Impact and it had the little badges, certificates, for quality, and is there any like industry standards that we should be looking for that, show it's a good quality product and they're not going to go out of business in 2 weeks and they'll be there in the long run? Any suggestions for that?
Oh, yeah, so I would definitely, first on the initial research, first see how long they've been in the business, just to check on their stability for now. And then once they make it to those steps and they look like they're a solution that could fit many of your needs, that's when it's best to meet with a human to ask, like, kind of about the product in the longer, like, are there any, what do the updates look like? What were your most recent updates, different things like that? What are some of your users? Do you like, if you're it just says what if they're like a certain type of organization, you can ask like, do you serve clients of these types, different things like that. So because it's also a good idea if they're already working with other similar type organizations, and then leaning on your peers is another good one too. If they have gone through the process as well, they may be able to help get you up to speed because they've been there, done that. Just kind of, they can be kind of like your consultants too. So going through those steps, I would say, would really kind of help and verify, is it an actual vendor that's going to be around for a while? Because yeah, you definitely don't want to go in a direction where you select a software and then they're out of business in a year. Then you have to do the process all over again. You definitely want to avoid that. So that's a great question, Linda.
Okay. Also, so I'm with a university and I'm assuming that my IT department has a list of requirements for like security and other things, systems requirements, by the university that whatever software we'll need to have in order to be approved by the university.
Correct. And oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something to add to that, Linda?
No, and you also mentioned something about ISO, some kind of certification or.
Correct. So what ISO 27001 is, it's a certification for how we manage security and data on our end, on the back end. It just highlights like we take certain measures and certain steps of protecting your data.
Okay.
Also on our website, we have available our technology and privacy brief as well. So you can definitely recommend them to go to betterimpact.com. There's a section on there where they can download our technology and privacy brief that lays out all of our different data and security protocols, and they can answer all the technical questions that even I don't understand. So that way they can assess if we make sense or not.
Okay.
Yeah, they're looking out for you. They're definitely a resource to rely on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome, Linda. Anyone else have any questions? Again, yeah, we don't have to rely on the chat. If you want to ask in person, I'm here to help, so I'm here to listen. All right, well, appreciate for everyone joining me. I'm going to go ahead and end the session. And again, just be sure to watch out on your email in the next 24 hours for a recording. They'll also have the helpful resources mentioned in this webinar today, so that way you can help choose the right software for the program. Thanks again, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.